Next up, we have our final and most futuristic session for the day on IT modernization with Nutanix, a cloud smart approach presented by Mr. Aaron White, Senior Regional Director, Middle East and Mediterranean, Nutanix. The stage is yours, Mr. White.
Thank you so much, Praveen. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today. I hope you can see my slides and hear me well.
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So again, I'm Aaron White. A real pleasure to be with you today. And I trust you're keeping safe as we continue to go through this worldwide pandemic. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we face together as IT professionals. And I'm sure none of these are unfamiliar to you. But certainly over the last 12-month period, they've been put into razor-sharp focus. So the complexity that we may have today in our data centers, the need to be able to provision quickly and respond to situations in front of us, that ongoing struggle around security that we heard a lot about today, the need to have downtime in the organization for basic low-level tasks. I don't think that we need to do that anymore. And I don't see anyone having more money to do things or more resources to do things. So those things have led to a shift. And that shift has been predominantly driven by the cloud and it resetting expectations. And, and there's four kind of key areas that we look at in terms of the expectations that we need as IT professionals. I want to deploy really quickly. I should be able to deploy an application in just minutes. It shouldn't take weeks and months. It needs to be planned well and processed well, but the deployment should be straightforward. I want to be able to pay for what I need when I need it. In fact, just double click on that. I also need to not pay for it when I'm not using it. And I think that's something that we really don't necessarily pay a great deal of attention to. And that's something, again, that cloud governance and the governance of utilities, the utility computing, is absolutely vital. One-click simplicity. Now, Nutanix has talked about one-click simplicity for a long time. I don't want to spend low-level time of my valuable resources on infrastructure management. How do I change that? And my infrastructure should get better on a regular basis, okay, because I'm subscribing to it. So the cloud has raised a number of questions, and these are just a few of them that really come to light over recently. And why public clouds? For a long time, everyone's talking about agility. Everyone's talking about a reduction in cost and that fractional consumption. But also, more and more, we see people simply following a trend. No CIO necessarily wants to be first, but certainly no CIO wants to be last. And, we saw that trend, for instance, 10 years ago with virtualization. Everyone wanted to virtualize. And I see now the cloud computing concept is an interesting one. No one wants to be last. Everyone wants to take advantage of it. But how you take advantage of it and the steps to doing so are super important. Lots of talk about security. How can I improve security? How do I do that? I'll talk a little bit about that a bit later. And sometimes the course is set. The organization I work on is moving to the cloud. How do I enable that? So those things together, again, are some of the why we're doing these things. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind over the next 10 minutes while I talk a little bit about some trends and how Nutanix can really help organizations. So first of all, private cloud. Now, private cloud's probably not going to go anywhere, right? Because at the end of the day, there are a number of gravity pulls that are going to keep certain applications or certain data or certain cost savings within a private cloud. And it may be that your application simply won't work in the cloud, okay, for a number of reasons. It may be that the regulatory compliance or the location of that data means that for you, that public cloud is not an option. It might be that your enterprise applications are very happy where they are. You understand the cost, you understand the performance, and why would I shift and lift those? And then perhaps you feel that you've got the right levels of control and security to be able to protect your apps and data within your private cloud. And we understand that, and we're here to help you with all of those items. Now, How can cloud make you get better? I think this is the interesting discussion, the interesting part of this. So first thing we did was we went out and we spoke to customers. Okay, I think you hear a lot from vendors saying, well, our opinion is this and our opinion is that. So in fact, what we did, we went out and we spoke to customers. We ran something called an enterprise cloud index, and we ran it here in the Middle East. I'm going to share with you some of the findings of this enterprise cloud index that we ran in November 2020, so just a few months ago. And what we're seeing is that enterprises are adopting, in vast majority, a hybrid cloud model. So what does the data say? The data says that 86% of organizations in the Middle East consider hybrid cloud as the ideal operating model. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that there's a combination of what you do in private cloud, what you do in public cloud, what you do on the what we call the edge cloud, and ultimately how you manage all those things together. So there's probably a few things that you need to get there. If the desired state from organizations in the Middle East is a hybrid cloud operating model, first thing you want to do is get rid of anything that's non-cloud enabled. How is it helping you? And to modernize the infrastructure, hyperconverged infrastructure is a great way. Nutanix is the market leader there, but that's just the first step. But it's an important step. It's an important step because then it unleashes the capabilities that we're going to talk about during the course of this presentation. So those first steps are really vital. Now, again, we looked at the data from the customers, and this is what they're saying, is that they're shifting the spend in the next 3 to 5 years from a drop in non-cloud enabled data centers to more than a doubling in terms of percentage points, and probably spend in terms of those going to a 5-year hybrid cloud infrastructure. I think this is really telling. This is the shift that we see in the industry as people sit down, look at their organization, look what they're trying to achieve, and realize that they need to change something. And when they say, sometimes people say, we'll go all in on cloud. Okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean all in on public cloud, all in on a hybrid cloud, all in on private cloud? And I think actually what we heard in this survey was that it was that hybrid cloud that gave them the flexibility to pick, choose, and ultimately match any one organization's desires and positive business outcomes. So what would those outcomes look like? Well, it was interesting. So for a start, cutting costs wasn't the top one that we saw. It was probably number 4. There were 3 other primary concerns or goals that organizations wanted to achieve. The first one was greater control of IT resources. So I'm going to stop there. So 58% of people said greater control of IT resources. So when we classify what is an IT resource, well, it can be a server, it can be software, but actually it's also people, right? Those IT professionals. How can we get IT professionals lifted up away from mundane management into innovation? So when I talk about innovation, what I'm talking about is how can those individuals improve process, improve customer experience, improve business profitability, rather than doing some basic ABC of keeping the lights on. So greater control of IT resources. The next one, very close second, was the flexibility to meet dynamic business requirements. Okay, so let's take an example there. So let's say you're an organization, you're very interested in artificial intelligence, a very hot topic. Artificial intelligence requires data models to be built. So you gather all your data, you get your data scientists to look at those data models and then come up with an algorithm that you then deploy into your application. And what happens, the AI then generates more data. The data scientist then looks at it, modifies that to be even better, and then deploys. Now, the very best organizations are looking to update that business model, that AI business model, not monthly or weekly, but the best of them are doing it daily. Can your infrastructure handle daily updates without business operation to be able to leverage something like AI? And I think this is one example of how people want to meet different dynamic business requirements, and there are many more. The last one that we're seeing here in the top 3 was better support for customers and remote workers. And we'll talk a little bit more about remote workers in a minute. But more and more, what we're seeing is that strategic business outcomes, way more than economics, are what is driving IT and the consumption of these differing cloud models. Okay, so let's have a look at it from a pandemic. You know, we've been running it for about a year now, and clearly we've seen many more flexible work setups. So for instance, in Nutanix, we've got an example of an organization utilizing our technology to burst thousands of virtual desktops into the public cloud, seamlessly operated by the same set of IT staff. And what we really determined during the course of this pandemic was the real use case for remote workers was business continuity, not security necessarily. And that business continuity then expands across everything you're doing, right? We live in a world of floods and disasters, and we see it time and again on the news when we see something like the floods in Australia yesterday, that DR is absolutely vital. And in the end, all of this can only really be achieved with success when everything is simplified. There's no point in having the very best DR if you need a runbook this big to be able to do it. It needs to be one click, simplicity, and the ability to test it and not to have outtime, just to test that your DR works should the very worst case happen. Now, the global pandemic has raised its profile around future cloud adoption. And again, some data from the customers. More than three quarters said that IT is now more strategic than ever. And I can't agree more. If I look at the conversations that I was having 18 months ago versus the conversations I'm having now, the people around the table are different. It's the business drivers in organizations are saying, we need to be able to show our digital footprint. We need to be able to react to a competitive threat. We need to be able to react to keep our staff happy. And when we double click on the data, nearly half of the respondents said that they increased their hybrid cloud investments as a direct result of the pandemic. And this together shows that us as IT professionals are at the spearhead of any business, because there's two important things in any business. It's your people and it's your data. And how we take care of that and the applications driving that data are absolutely vital. So let's have a look at what it looks like, and I'll just share some insight here. So we've got on the left, private cloud, and that can manage your data, your applications, your virtual networks. It's compliant. It has great economic advantage. We can very, very accurately tell you how much an application or group of applications is going to cost you over a period of time. In the public cloud side of things, there's ease of use, there's elasticity, there's numerous cloud services that you're going to want to consume, and that's wonderful. But the key to this is actually, how do you manage this as a unified environment? How do I operate this that provides the very best value and the very best flexibility for my organization? So let's have a little look in terms of how we do it at Nutanix. So we want to bring these together with very, very modern hybrid infrastructure. And that needs to be the underlying layer for anything that you want to do. Once you've done that first initial step, you're then able to build a consistent set of constructs and, importantly for the people, skill sets. Okay, so what we at Nutanix are advocating is, irrespective of where the cloud is, the single set of skill sets can be used to manage and run these applications. And then that allows what we heard about earlier today about process being very simplified and consistent across your organization. The next thing we want to ensure is seamless migration and elasticity between clouds. And that requires some extremely smart management solutions, which Nutanix offer. And again, native integration with those very attractive cloud services, because you're going to want to pull those in to your modern business applications. And another key thing is we don't want to provide lock-in, right? We want to make clouds absolutely invisible and the ability to drive your licenses wherever you need them without having to double pay for anything. And that's what we do at Nutanix essentially, is that we provide super great innovative technology that gives you the freedom of choice to run your private cloud on whatever infrastructure you wish, to be able to utilize cloud services from whichever public cloud service provider you wish, and more importantly, to unify and simplify operations across any of those combinations. It is a tremendous amount of complexity that Nutanix wants to hide to allow you to simplify. Now, I think we've spoken a little bit about this over the last 15 minutes. My call to action would be to try it for yourself. We have a wonderful Cloud Insight experience, nutanix.com/one-platform, which will take you on a guided test drive of this one cloud experience. And you can really see the power of the one-click simplicity that Nutanix whole ethos and design around our software and technologies that allows you to quickly set up DR, to quickly set up various services, to quickly deploy applications, to manage them throughout their life cycle. So I hope that gives you a little insight into hybrid cloud and the role that Nutanix plays into it. So with that, I thank you. I'm here for questions if there's time. Otherwise, I'll hand back to Naveen. Thank you, everybody.
Well, I have a question for you, Aaron.
Sure.
From the audience. Okay. So from one of our audience members, in your opinion, Aaron, what would be the biggest benefit that Nutanix can bring in the IT modernization journey in Qatar?
Yeah, I think to tie it down to one is a tough ask. I think there's a couple of big ones. So the first thing is around simplification of complex data centers. So Nutanix technology is very easy to use. What we see is that existing organizations' infrastructure is very complicated. So the first one we can do is to reduce that complexity and make it way more manageable. And typically, when things are way more manageable, you then generate a lot of cost or savings or a reduction in risk. I hope that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it certainly does. Thank you so much for answering that, Aaron. And it was quite insightful, the information that you have shared with us. And with this, I think we are done for today's session.